When I used to go to game stores a few years back, I would always go to the Switch section to see if they had a copy of Miitopia, notice that they had sold out of the game, and then leave feeling really unsatisfied. But as I would walk out, I would always notice one game on the shelf that really caught my interest. Aside from noticing the tomboy on the cover, I also saw that it not only had Shovel Knight, but also Isaac? Huh? What kind of game is this, I would think to myself, before going home and watching reruns of regular show while eating ice cream. Even though I never bought a copy back then, 2018's Blade Strangers has always lived rent-free in the back of my mind. While trying to think of video ideas at 4 in the morning on a Tuesday, Blade Strangers popped back into my head, and I decided to finally give this game a shot and report my thoughts and feelings regarding the game. Released for the PS4, Switch, PC, and arcades in Japan, Blade Strangers is a crossover fighting game that features characters from many games like Cave Story, Azure Striker Gunvolt, and Code of Princess, as well as the aforementioned Shovel Knight and The Binding of Isaac. I usually make videos about games that I'm already intimately familiar with, but with Blade Strangers it's quite the opposite. I know very little about the game. I'm a sucker for crossover fighters though, so I think that Blade Strangers does look like a lot of fun, if not a little bit simplistic in terms of gameplay, but we'll get into that later. For now, let's learn about the history and development of Blade Strangers. Blade Strangers was developed by Studio Saizenzen, a Japanese game studio famous for... give me a moment here. Yeah, I don't know any of these. Studio Saizenzen was founded by game designer and illustrator Toshinobu Kondo in September 1996, so they've had a long history of developing games in many different genres. I could be wrong about this, as this studio and their games are really obscure, but as far as I can tell during my research, Saizenzen had only developed one fighting game before working on Blade Strangers, Blade Arcus from Shining, so this game was their second attempt at such a project. The game's design philosophy was one of simplicity, as according to a 2017 article by IGN written about the game, the game features a 4-button control setup, where every attack can be executed by using different combinations of those attack buttons. In this way, publisher Nicholas and Studio Saizenzen aim to create a less complex control experience that will be more accessible to those new to the fighting genre. With this quote, we can easily tell that Blade Strangers was developed for an audience who were inexperienced with fighting games as a whole, as having a small amount of buttons, as well as no motion inputs, would aim to even the playing field between players. Blade Strangers was also produced by Binding of Isaac developer Tyrone Rodriguez and published by American studio Nicholas, and they assisted with securing the rights for the game's guest characters. In a 2018 interview with Nintendo Life, Toshinobu Kondo revealed that, "We were originally making the game by ourselves, so at first we were mainly looking at Studio Saizenzen characters like Solange and Umihara Kawase. And then we had a wonderful encounter with Tyrone from Nicholas. He and I, and the team, discovered that we all had very similar thoughts and opinions regarding the direction of the game. So whenever Nicholas would say, hey, how about adding this character, everyone was totally up for it. Everything was decided very smoothly, and pretty soon we had 14 characters lined up." In this same interview, Kondo also revealed that the game had been play-tested by both novice and world-class fighting game players to ensure both of these crowds could enjoy the game upon its release. Even players who have avoided fighting games up until this point should be able to compete well in Blade Strangers matches because of the elegant controls. My wish is for the game to become a fighting game that many people can play both casually and competitively. Also, players can become familiar with many characters that nobody would have expected to see in a fighting game. We want to provide our players with the fun of simple controls that feel good, along with the freedom to choose the character of their liking. And to top it off, if players are then able to hone their skills and discover the depth of the fighting game that lies beyond the simplicity, that would make us extremely happy too. You may have noticed by now, but Blade Strangers uses 2D sprites for its characters, which isn't very common anymore in fighting games. These sprites were created by first making 3D character models for every character, rendering them in their animation frames, and then a team of 2D artists would rasterize them and perform cleanup work. This is a very unique way to do fighting game graphics, and Kondo stated in this interview that since Studio Saizenzen had been using this method for over a decade at that point, it was a no-brainer to stick with this tried-and-true method. Aside from graphics and controls, another crucial aspect of fighting games is game balance, right? As you don't want one character to dominate the rest of the entire cast. And in yet another interview, this time with Silicon Era, Kondo said that, regarding characters that pose challenges to work on, Kawase's fishing lure, Curly's machine gun, and Solange's sword all made it difficult to adjust the battle balance. Characters who can hold weapons can sometimes be too advantageous in a fighting game, but we are happy with the balance that we've achieved. To be honest, I think that Kondo might have a point here. I'm unsure of when Blade Strangers started development properly, but as it was announced at E3 2017, I estimate 2015 or 2016 would have been when the project got off the ground. With the background out of the way, let's get into the gameplay and the character roster of Blade Strangers. The game has 17 unique characters, ranging from the recognizable to the furthest thing from mainstream. Blade Strangers has 4 buttons: light, heavy, skill, and special. The first 2 are obvious, but the last 2 require some explaining. Skill refers to your character's unique special moves. You know how you can input a direction on the stick and then press the B button in Smash Bros to get your special moves out? It works the exact same way here, so if you've played Smash Bros before, you'll easily understand how this works. If you press heavy and skill together, you can perform what's known as a heavy skill, which is stronger than your regular skill moves. If you press the special button, however, you can perform a few universal options. Neutral special is an anti-air, back is a wall bounce, forward is an overhead, and down is a sweep. This system gives the whole character roster a universal set of options that can work in specific situations, so in my opinion, there isn't one character who lacks crucial tools, which is good. If you press heavy, skill, and special at once, you can perform a level 1 super, but if you input this twice in a row, you will perform a level 2 super. Supers cost meter of course, and the higher the level, the more meter is required. By pressing light and special together during an attack, you can spend a bar of meter to dash forward and keep the combo going, so it's sort of like Street Fighter 6's drive rush mechanic. Finally, if you press light, heavy, and special when you're at 35% or below and you have full meter, you can heat up. This mechanic lets you take a hit from the enemy with super armor and then fire back with one of your own. All of that may sound overwhelming, but it's actually really simple and pretty easy to understand when you start playing, especially if you're already experienced with fighting games. If you're like me, then one of the first things you would have wondered about are the game's combos, and after trying them out in training mode, I realized that they too were very simple. Like Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, for example, you can press light 3 times in a row for a mini auto combo, and these can start your actual combos. Speaking of actual combos, Blade Strangers has what's known as the repetition penalty. You see how this bar drains as I perform a combo? My combo will end when the bar drains fully, but if I do the same move over and over again, the game will tell me off and it's going to end my combo early. I assume this is to prevent infinites from happening, but it makes performing combos feel really weird when you're starting out. During my first few times playing the game, I would try to freestyle combos in training mode with a bunch of different characters, but the game would always end them early, which was quite anticlimactic. There are ways to get around this, but players who are new to Blade Strangers, or even fighting games in general, might be a bit dissatisfied with the system, at least in the beginning. Alright, enough about the mechanics, let's explore the game's character roster now. Blade Strangers launched with 14 characters, with 3 of them arriving afterwards in a free update, and they're mostly from different games. Solange is from Code of Princess, Emiko is from Umehara Kawase, Aban is from 1001 Spikes, etc., so there's some decent character variety here. My only gripe is that out of the 17 characters, only 8 games are represented, not counting Blade Stranger's original characters. There are 5 characters from Code of Princess, meaning that nearly 30% of the roster is made up of characters from this one game, and this would have been even more with the original 14 character roster. In terms of gameplay, Blade Strangers has the usual fighting game character archetypes. Quote is an all-rounder, Master T is Rushdown, Gunvolt is a glass cannon, etc., so there's a character in the game for everyone pretty much. During my research, I was browsing the Mizumi wiki page for the game, and as soon as I read that Shovel Knight could be viewed as the game's grappler, I knew to go all in on my boy and try to learn him. With the ability to dig to find treasure, charge up a strike that leads to a wall bounce, and a command grab that can be used to start combos, I was having the time of my life playing as Shovel Knight. All of the characters look and sound different, which is good, but I thought that the simplicity of the gameplay overall hinders each character's uniqueness a bit. I personally prefer having proper motion inputs in fighting games, as I feel that not only do they provide gameplay depth, but they can also express character. While I do enjoy the gameplay of Blade Strangers overall, I feel that things are a bit too homogeneous within its control scheme, and it leads to each of the characters feeling the same to me after a while. I would have liked some more ways to differentiate between the characters in terms of gameplay, and I think that developer Studio Saizenzen could have perhaps introduced a system where— never mind, this is the best game of all time. In a throwback to my older videos, let's explore the game's content and see what kind of modes it has to offer. For starters, Blade Strangers has both offline and online multiplayer. Playing offline is fun, and I don't really need to elaborate on this mode since you already know what it is, but when it comes to online, yeah, due to how obscure this game is, I couldn't actually find anyone to play online with, and I also hear that the game has delay-based netcode, so I'm not sure how good the connection would be anyway. The game also has training mode, which is pretty standard in terms of what it has to offer. You can make the training dummy act in certain ways to improve your game, and it works well overall. To be honest, there's nothing in this training mode that I haven't seen before in another fighting game, but it functions overall, so I'm not going to complain about it. Arcade mode, challenges, and a tutorial are here too. Arcade mode is obvious, so let's explore the other modes. Challenge mode includes combo trials and survival. There are 3 difficulties here, and it reminds me of Street Fighter V's survival mode in this regard, especially because you can earn new colors for completing it. As for combo trials, I'm a sucker for this mode in any fighting game, so I'm delighted that they're here too. There are 5 of them for every character, and none of them, at least the ones that I tried out, went on for too long. Having this mode quickly allows you to understand which characters you like doing combos with, so I think it's a really fun mode and I really like that it's here. Speaking of things that I like, the tutorial isn't that bad either. It's split up into portions and you can choose what you want to specifically learn this way. The language that the game uses to explain its mechanics is very simple, but that fits in line with trying to appeal to fighting game newcomers, so I quite like this decision actually. My only gripe with the tutorial mode is how short some of these sections are. Take a look how quickly the section on combos is, for example. Yeah, that's literally the whole thing. They don't teach you how to perform juggles, air combos, or how to use media to extend a combo, so you'll have to figure all that out for yourself in training mode. Each character has their own mini storyline, and they each go on for around 15 to 25 minutes. This mode has cutscenes that play out in a visual novel format, and it also has voice acting, which is really cool, especially because it means we get to hear Shovel Knight speaking Japanese. While there aren't cutscenes after every fight, the cutscenes that are present here do contain plenty of fan service, and not just in the visual department. Characters often speak about the worlds that they come from, and while a lot of it is going over my head as I haven't played any other games by this studio, I'm sure that fans of games like Code of Princess and 1001 Spikes will appreciate the little references placed throughout. I also really enjoy the character artwork that appears in these cutscenes too. All the artwork in these cutscenes are really high quality, and they fit in nicely with the backgrounds that accompany them. Blade Stranger's visual novel cutscenes are really conventional in presentation, but I do enjoy the writing and the voice acting. My biggest gripe with the story mode, if I had to pick one, is that it gets quite repetitive and it feels like you're just going through the motions after a while, so I'd highly recommend playing story mode in short bursts. When I'm interested in seeing how a game was received by critics for one of my videos, I usually head to the game's Wikipedia page and click reception to find quotes and sources I can read, so here we go. I guess no one was ever bothered to write a section on Blade Stranger's reception. I guess I've got to put on my detective cap and find sources in the barren, dystopian wasteland that is a simple Google search. Metacritic tells us that Blade Strangers on both PS4 and Switch has a 75, which is a positive score. The Switch version has more reviews than the PS4 version, and this makes sense considering that the Switch was the main platform for the game. A common cause for praise in the reviews that I read were about the game's simple control scheme. I can't imagine a whole lot of game journalists, and just game fans in general I suppose, being long-time, experienced fighting game fans who were being assaulted in the 90s over Street Fighter 2 throws, so giving this crowd something easily digestible would have made the game much more enjoyable. Blade Stranger's character roster was also appreciated, as having a bunch of Studio Saizenzen characters, as well as some iconic third-party characters in one game where they can fight each other, is a really cool idea. The biggest gripe that reviewers had with the game is that there simply isn't a lot of single-player content, and I totally agree. Blade Strangers doesn't have any brand new or innovative modes that we haven't seen in any other fighting game, so it's hard to recommend if you purchase the game specifically for the single player. In terms of how the FGC received Blade Strangers, it's really hard to find solid information about the game due to how niche it is, but I did my best. As far as I can tell, Blade Strangers was most recently at EVO Japan 2023 as a side tournament with a 21-man bracket, so that's not bad. FGC member Diaphone, at least I think that's how you say his name, has also made a video about an online tournament for the game he participated in back in 2022. This tournament had $1,000 on the line, so it's quite an entertaining watch, and it's all thanks to the Blade Strangers Discord server, so if you're interested, I'll leave a link to that server in the video description. It's 2024 as of me writing this video, and to be honest, I never see Blade Strangers at any fighting game events I attend. This game's lack of popularity within the core FGC could be attributed to a lot of things. Maybe the game just isn't super popular online anymore, or maybe it's due to the simple controls, or a lot of the characters just being unrecognizable. I really don't know, and I wish I knew why. I'd love to see Blade Strangers more often in both online and offline FGC circles. To be perfectly honest, I think that in terms of simple input fighting games and that whole side of things, I think Project L is going to take it in terms of popularity. Overall, I quite like Blade Strangers, even more than I thought I would going into the game initially. Despite only knowing 2 characters going in, I really had fun with the game, and I found that its combo system and overall gameplay mechanics were enjoyable, if a little, actually maybe a lot on the simple side. There's nothing that Blade Strangers does that I haven't seen before, and with a small player base and delay-based netcode, it's a hard sell if you're really big on fighting games. But if you're a new player and you just want to play something that isn't too hard executionally, then I recommend the game. If you can get some friends around to play locally, it's pretty good fun. I'd love to see a sequel or some sort of continuation in the future with even more characters from different games, so here's hoping. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.